Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another brand new episode of the Word of the Day podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Silva, and it is my honor and privilege to be back here behind the mic once again, ready to explain another useful word to you all. But first, it's poetry hour here on the program, seeing as how we received an exceedingly artful and linguistically advanced couple of couplets from alert listener Dave. So thank you, Dave. Now, such is the breadth and scope of Dave's vocabulary that before I read his excellent stanza, I'm going to have to explain the meaning of 4 different words that you might not have heard of. From the most to the least common, they are as follows. Cremation is the act of burning or reducing to ashes. A conflagration is a fire. Defenestrate means to throw something, usually a person and potentially yourself, out a window. Once again, that word is defenestrate, with the noun form being defenestration. And finally, the word ukelagon, which I'd never heard of before, means a neighbor whose house is on fire. True story, drawn from the legendary story of the Fall of Troy. You see, Ukelagon was a prominent person in that ill-fated city, which, if you don't know the tale, a spoiler alert, Troy was sacked by the Greeks as part of, shall we say, a marital dispute. So anyway, at one point, the Greeks burned down Ukelagon's house, which honestly is not a terribly shocking thing to happen during a sacking. And that's why his name, which in Greek ironically translates to doesn't worry, became an eponym, and that is episode 71. An eponym is like a name that becomes another word. So the eponym Ukelagon once again means a neighbor whose house is on fire. Okay, now that we know all that, we should be easily able to understand Dave's poem, which goes as follows, quote, "My neighbor's house was burning down, Ukelagon was he, and had to then defenestrate, a better word than flee. He grabbed his wife and laptop to escape the conflagration, but left his bills and Brussels sprouts for justified cremation." Unquote. Wow, let's get a round of poetry snaps for Dave here. That was really something. While none of those words are useful enough to get their own episode, that's okay. We like them anyway. Thanks once again, Dave. You can write anytime. So can the rest of you, actually. The email address, if you wish to do so, is wotdpodcast@gmail.com. That is WOTD, as in word of the day. Okay, it's now time to learn about today's word, which is the verb pontificate. I would say this means to speak at length, probably in a pompous manner. So if you've ever been sitting in an all-hands or staff meeting at work, listening to an executive type drone on about the supposedly very exciting things that are happening at the firm these days, and what we could accomplish together this quarter if we all just buckle down and have a little more client focus. Well, in this situation, you might mutter to a nearby coworker, "How are we supposed to get any work done when we're stuck here listening to all this pontificating?" Turning now to the Google definition, it goes, quote, "to express one's opinions in a way considered annoyingly pompous and dogmatic," unquote. Very good, and awfully close to mine, I might add. I guess we should define those last 2 adjectives just to make sure. Pompous means like arrogant and self-important, and dogmatic means, per Merriam-Webster, quote, "expressing personal opinions or beliefs as if they are certainly correct and cannot be doubted," unquote. I totally agree with those. Now, our rule here on the show is that we'll only talk about etymology insofar as it's interesting. And as it happens, the etymology of pontificate, I think, is super interesting. To explore it, we gotta go all the way back to ancient Rome. Not just because this word comes from Latin, which of course it does, but because there's some cool history here as well. History that will help you understand what the word means and how to use it. So Rome and the Romans had their own religion, right? Which many people, including myself until working on this episode, just sort of thought that they lifted straight from the Greeks. So the Greek god Zeus became the Roman god Jove, the Greek Ares becomes Mars, Aphrodite becomes Venus, etc. Turns out it's more complicated than this. Ancient polytheistic, meaning a lot of gods, polytheistic religions picked up deities from other cultures regularly. Or they'd just be like, "Oh hey, that one god you guys worship sounds a lot like this one we already have. So they must just be the same god. Cool. We're just gonna merge them, if that's okay." Next etymological item, the top Roman religious officer, which is sort of a state function as well as a religious function, he was called the pontifex, or chief priest, which, for reasons no one has really nailed down, translates approximately to bridge maker. Anyway, so that's Pontifex, which, fun fact, Julius Caesar served as one for a while. Our next stop in this whirlwind etymological tour is in the 1670s, when the Roman Catholic Church started using the word pontiff with the same meaning as pontifex to refer to bishops, especially the Bishop of Rome, aka the Pope. Which makes sense, seeing as how the Pope is like the top-ranking Catholic personage, and bishops, well, they outrank priests. And even today, actually, the secondary meaning of pontificate is, quote, to officiate as bishop, especially at Catholic Mass, unquote. So there you go. Now, Merriam-Webster informs us that, quote, by the early 1800s, pontificate was also being used derisively, as in making fun of someone, used derisively for individuals who spoke as if they had the authority of an ecclesiastic, unquote. And an ecclesiastic is like a bishop or higher, someone who presumably has the knowledge and gravitas to opine on matters of church doctrine, dogma, all that. This reminds me a bit of episode 66 on the word officious, which means, quote, assertive of authority in an annoyingly domineering way, unquote. Both of these words contain the ideas of authority and being annoying, which is a logical combination because few things are more annoying than people who put on airs, or act like they're better than you or are in charge of you. Hence why pontificate usually has a negative connotation. But to be clear, pontificators, which is the noun form, the person who pontificates, pontificators don't have to be speaking about religious matters. That connotation is faded. Just anyone who may be going on and on as if they're an expert, but are actually not, or at least not so much as they think. Sort of like they're being a pretend expert, if you remember our last episode where we played this game. Although, you know what, now that I'm saying this, I do think it is possible, although not quite as common, for the pontificator to indeed be an expert, but that doesn't mean that people want to listen to them for as long as they want to talk. And that actually brings me to one additional usage note for pontificate. I think the word implies that the speaker is talking for too long, like they're expounding on a topic at length, probably past the attention or interest of the audience. Tons of people, whether in authority or not, like to act and talk as if they know a lot of things. And one way to try to display that knowledge, real or imagined, is to talk for a long time about whatever it is. I mean, I often jokingly say that one of the reasons I started this show is that I like to talk about language and things related to it for way longer than I could reasonably expect friends or family to be interested. Which is not an indictment of them, obviously. Like, can you imagine getting stuck in a conversation with me about the meaning, etymology, and usage and examples for pontificate, and I just talked at you for like 15 minutes straight, even if you lost interest 45 seconds in? I mean, it's a social disaster, right? So instead, I put all those thoughts and all that enthusiasm for the subject on this podcast, where I can pontificate about cool words to my heart's content. And then people who like that sort of thing can listen as much as they feel like it, and people who don't like it so much don't have to listen. It's a perfect system, really. Everybody wins. Okay, let's now turn to a couple examples of how to use pontificate in ordinary conversation or writing. Example number 1. Watch out, guys. Here comes Chad, warned Barry in a low voice. He's cool, but he works in finance, so if you do the obvious thing and ask him for his thoughts on Bitcoin, he's liable to pontificate for ages about cryptocurrencies and the blockchain and distributed ledgers, and if we're particularly unlucky, maybe even NFTs. Example number 2 is from Wikipedia, a source that I don't use very often, and it's, of course, not great literature, but hey, this nicely captures the proper usage of pontificate. This is from an article about an Arabic novel by the Iraqi author Ali Badr. Quote, oral discourse was integral to the culture of the coffee house of the early 1960s in Baghdad. Most of the intellectuals pontificated endlessly over dominoes in the morning and regrouped in the local bars at night. Their knowledge of philosophy was limited to books' titles and short summaries found in newspapers and literary magazines. Unquote. Very good. So we see here again that limited knowledge on a subject needn't stand in the way of the persevering pontificator. Example number 3 is also from a random source, this being the advisory council for this park in Chicago, sort of giving a history of it. Quote, by the 1910s, the neighborhood surrounding Washington Square had become more diverse. Like Speaker's Corner in London's Hyde Park, Washington Square became a popular spot for soapbox orators. Artists, writers, political radicals, and hobos pontificated, lectured, recited poetry, ranted, and raved. A group of regulars formed the Dill Pickle Club, devoted to free expression. And for years, Washington Square orators appointed their own honorary king, unquote. Wow, sounds like a fun bunch of bohemians down there. I myself don't quite see the connection between dill pickles and free speech, but hey, I support that club's right to say there is one. For the last couple examples, we're actually going to play 2 clips that contain the word. The first comes from the 1977 film Annie Hall. In this scene, the main characters are standing in a theater line, listening to someone behind them go on and on about a movie.
We saw the Fellini film last Tuesday. It is not one of his best. It lacks a cohesive structure. You get the feeling that he's not absolutely sure what it is he wants to say. Of course, I've always felt he was essentially a technical filmmaker. Granted, La Strada was a great film. Great in its use of negative imagery more than anything else. But that central cohesive core, that must lead through an artist's work, leading from one to the other.
He's screaming his opinions in my ear.
You understand what I'm talking about? Like all that Juliet of the Spirits or Satyricon. I found it incredibly indulgent. He really is. He's one of the most indulgent filmmakers. He really is.
Keyword here
and
is indulgent.
Without getting linear.
What do you do when you get stuck on a movie line with a guy like this behind you?
Wait a minute. Why can't I give my opinion? This is a free country?
He can give you. You have to give it so loud. I mean, aren't you ashamed to pontificate like that? And the funny part of it is, Marshall McLuhan, you don't know anything about Marshall McLuhan's work.
Really? I happen to teach a class at Columbia called TV, Media, and Culture. So I think that my insights into Mr. McLuhan, have a great deal of validity.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Well, that's funny because I happen to have Mr. McLuhan right here. So yeah, just let me come over here a second.
Oh,
Tell him.
I heard what you were saying. You know nothing of my work. You mean my whole fallacy is wrong. How you ever got to teach a course in anything is totally amazing.
Boy, if life were only like this.
If only, indeed. And you likely couldn't tell this just from the audio there, but there's some serious fourth wall breakage at the end where the actor turns and addresses the camera/viewing audience directly. Okay, the last example here comes from the great show Seinfeld. Here we go.
All right, now you're going to see some parallel parking. Oh, I wish you could make a living parallel parking. It's all geometry, knowing all the angles, when to make that first turn, and then when to swing it back in. That's the key.
You just park it already.
There's nothing I can even impart to you. That's the sad thing. It's so inborn. I can't pass it on. Look at this guy. Crazy? What are you doing? Hey! You're stealing my space!
George, wait, you don't know who this guy is? People kill for a parking space in this city.
No. He's not getting away with this.
George!
And then later in this episode, after there's been this long standoff between him and the other person who's trying to get the spot, we hear the following exchange.
What are we gonna do, stay out here all night?
Yes, I'm not giving him the satisfaction. It's my space.
Why don't you just flip a coin already?
No. This is a matter of principle. That would just be saying that anybody can just pull into any parking space any way they want.
Maybe if you hadn't been sitting there pontificating about what a great parker you were, you might have got the space.
Okay, folks, that'll do it for the examples, but that will not do it for today's show. We've got one more clip to play for you that I recorded earlier, and I think I explain everything in it, so let's just roll it. Up next is another edition of Conversation Games. You may have heard us do Pretend Expert, where you get a topic and you have to answer questions about it as if you're an expert about it. Even though you're not, you just make stuff up and try to sound as authoritative as possible. The following game is a variation on Pretend Expert, and it's called Pretend Opinion. In this one, you're given a random topic, and you have to just take a firm position, a clear stance on it, pro or con, or favoring this thing versus that thing. There is no hedging, there are no gray areas, no I can see it both ways. It's just adamant opinions. And here to help me demonstrate it, this game, please welcome back to the show, Paige. You've heard her voice before. Paige, say hello.
Hello, Jamie. Always glad to be here.
Excellent. And just a couple more details before we start. First, this is not long. Your replies are in the order of like 15 to 20 seconds. If you want to go on, that's fine, but don't worry about it.
I mean, I love to talk, so who knows?
Second, we won't do topics that you might actually have an opinion on. If you already have an opinion, it's sort of cheating. It's not as creative.
Okay.
Right? And also it's less fun. It's supposed to be random and whimsical topics. The last thing is, of course, the opinions you say do not at all have to be your real opinions. Sometimes, in fact, it's more fun to offer a different one. So I've prepared here just a small list of just random things, and you're welcome to do the same. We'll just sort of switch off back and forth. So your first topic here, Paige, is scarves. We would like you to issue an opinion about scarves, just what you wear.
Jamie, I don't know how anyone could possibly be pro-scarf. When I think of scarves, I think of heat and strangulation. If I wanted my neck covered, Jamie, I'd wear a turtleneck. I don't understand the superfluousness of a piece of fabric that may or may not just get in my way later. I don't need one more thing to hold. You will never catch me wearing a scarf.
That's a superb specimen, folks. Top line, well started. Would you like to give me a topic?
Jamie, what's your opinion on overhead lights versus lamps?
Between overhead lights and lamps, you have to pick lamps every single time. On the grounds of banality alone, I think you're going to encounter them anyway, so why would you seek them out? Lamps, on the other hand, they've got character, they've got pizzazz. I have, and this is actually true, I have a lamp that I treasure very much. It's in the shape of an ampersand, like the little and sign, like the symbol for an and. It is therefore called a lampersand. Again, how much style can you fit into one glowing orb? An immense amount. Overhead, please don't even look at it. Lamps all the way.
I also fully agree with you.
Yes. Great, very good. Your next topic is LaCroix.
LaCroix. I have heard people say that it's like if you whispered the word strawberry into a glass. I love LaCroix, though. Not only have I tried every single flavor of LaCroix, I think I like 90% of them. I have a swimsuit that looks like a LaCroix can. I've never had a better beverage. This is the only thing that I ever want to drink. It's LaCroix or it's nothing.
Next, very good. One for me, please.
All right, here's one for you. Books made into movies.
Books turned into movies, that's going to be a hard pass from me, and that's for a couple reasons. Number one, look, movies, fine, all well and good. I go see movies, but if you've been given the opportunity to exercise your own imagination by reading something off the text and having the characters populate in your head, rather than just being force-fed to you off of the big screen or any size screen, why would you stunt your own intellectual and creative growth in that way? Books, absolutely. And also, as you probably have noticed, Paige, once you see a movie form of a book, the version that you created in your head, the world you have built in your head, fades away. It is really a tragic thing. Folks, avoid tragedy in your life whenever possible. Read the book. Do not watch the movie. Dune gets an exception.
You have to leave that in. Dune does get an exception. What a quality book, quality movie.
Next one is spelunking, or just cave exploration.
Cave exploration.
Cave exploration is your topic.
Sure.
Pro or con?
If I could be any animal in the world, I think I'd be a bat. And as a human who would love nothing more than to be a bat, I am very pro cave exploration. How would I, a human, ever even get close to, again, my dream of becoming a winged mammal? If I didn't go spelunking and cave exploring myself, which is why you can find me Wednesdays every morning. It's dark in the cave, but it's light in our souls. As president of the Spelunking Club here in the Pacific Northwest, we only have a few caves to explore. But Jamie, I've explored them all. And have I hung upside down pretending to be a bat? Maybe once or twice. And it was worth it. And it is why I truly and heavily endorse spelunking. I
think your club has lost my application. I've been waiting to hear back. I know it's exclusive, but do try to take a look for me.
I'll move it to the top of the pile.
Thanks so much. Okay, we'll just do a couple more of these. One more back and forth. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, one for me.
Jamie, I would love to know your thoughts on socks with sandals. I currently am wearing socks with my Birkenstocks. So what are your thoughts on that?
Whenever I'm considering footwear, I have to ask myself, does it make my feet comfortable? And from that standpoint, it's not a contest. I mean, I could ask you yourself, Paige, is that comfortable?
Very.
It's maximally so. Of course, the only tiny caveat I'd make is make sure these are good quality socks, fuzzier variety. In the form-function debate, look, in some areas, I'll give it to you like you want to look nice or whatever. As far as your feet are concerned, it is a must that those be kept in really mint condition and fully cosseted even, pampered at all times. Warmth and comfort for your appendages are crucial. So as part of that philosophy, and really it underpins just a lot of decisions that I make in my life, I'm going to say strong yes on socks with sandals.
Really good choice.
Thank you. I've never worn those. Great. Last one here. County fairs.
All right. The only thing better than a county fair is a state fair. And I would say that county fairs have twice the charm, which is why I am always going to be pro county fair. The last time I was at one, I had almost a spiritual experience with a beautiful quilt that was made. I'm told by hand. And I don't think that that's an experience that can be replicated in any form. And so I am pro county fair. It has the food, it has the crafts, it has the prizes, the trophies. Has it all, folks. Attend your local county fair.
Wonderful. Okay, that'll do it for us. You folks, you can see how this works. The opinions they're creative, they're informative. They are potentially false. You have no idea, but that's not the point. Paige, delightfully done. A model for, because again, I teach students this. I may be sending them this episode because what better way to get more listeners than to make it mandatory. So thank you again very much.
Always happy to be here.
Wonderful.